welcome to Overtime Hockey Talk. My name is Mark Paul. My co-host Justin Baker and I will continue breaking down every team across the league's goaltending situation as we continue to move through the Stanley Cup Finals, and we come very close to the NHL draft, free agency. It is going to be like a snowball. Like, it's going to happen so quick. We're already to Game 4, which is going to be played tonight. We're recording this Friday at about 6 p.m. So the results of Game 4, we're not going to discuss too much of the finals other than maybe some general things. But the finals are almost over. Like, even if this goes 7 games, you know, we've got less than a week left of the regular season, and then it's game time. We've already seen now Patrick Hornqvist get dealt, and we'll talk a little bit about that. But we'll also mainly dive into goaltending situation, because the goaltending free agent market is probably the craziest that it has been in a very long time.
Ever.
Like, I can think of in 1998, like, you had Curtis Joseph become a free agent, and that was a huge bidding war for Curtis Joseph and him going to Toronto. There has been some big names, but in terms of, like, the whole entire goaltending landscape can change in this offseason. So we're going to hone in on that. I think that it will have some pretty big importance in that. And with Justin being our resident goaltender, going to let him take it away, starting with the Florida Panthers. If you missed the previous show, we were just going in alphabetical order from the Anaheim Ducks to the Edmonton Oilers. You can go back, subscribe to the show, listen to that one, and catch up. Get with the program.
Get with it.
And let's do the Florida Panthers.
Yeah, no, before I do that, though, I got to tell our listeners, the 2 or 3 of them that are still here, why we've been on hiatus for like a week and a half. Because,
True.
You know, most people probably don't know this, but Mark had a little baby girl.
I did have a child.
Yeah, not going to divulge any details there, but, big congrats.
Oh, thank you.
So, yeah.
Her name's Esme. So some lady at the store, you know, she sees us, we're like walking around with her, and she says, "Oh, what's your baby's name?" "Oh, Esme." And she says, "That is one unusual name, but I love it. It's beautiful." Like, it really is. It is. It's not untrue. Like, it is unusual.
Right.
I've never met
Not
anybody
common.
named Esme. A couple people have said, "Oh, I know, like, you know, one other person who named their kid that or something." But it is a beautiful name. It comes from Esmeralda. I guess it's like kind of the longer name, and you kind of shorten it down. So
Love it.
Yeah. So we didn't want to go full on Disney princess, so we went with Esme, which apparently the mother of whatever the vampire in Twilight. The mom.
Never watched those movies, but yeah.
But
I know what you're talking about.
The really pale faced guy. His mom her name is Esme.
Okay.
So,
yeah, Batman's mom. Got it.
Batman. Yes, Batman's mom.
Which is weird. He's actually a bat now.
Is he?
Robert Pattinson is playing Batman and the vampire bats. It's like all connected now. It's weird, but
my mouth is actually like hanging open. You can't see it. I don't really know what happened or how we went down this road, but I'm gonna run,
dude. He looks pretty BA. I'm not gonna lie.
Nice. Okay. So, cool. Okay. Well, that's for our movie podcast.
Yeah.
Which I would clearly be terrible on because I never watch movies. Okay, Florida Panthers. Thank you for the shout out on the child. Really, my wife did everything,
all the work.
I like pressed into some acupressure spots, and that was my job.
There you go.
Was some pain management, but mostly some of the drugs helped that. So. Legal drugs provided by a doctor in hospital.
I'm glad we're clarifying
via IV. So nothing to do with me. Okay, so the Florida Panthers,
yes, back on
and
topic.
Their goaltending situation. We know they made the biggest splash last year in the offseason, signing Sergei Bobrovsky to a fat $70 million deal, $10 million cap hit. He had one of the worst seasons, not just for himself, but just straight up was one of the worst goaltenders in the NHL, and in the playoffs was not much better. So what are we looking at here for the Florida Panthers?
Yeah, I'm sure they, especially now given the landscape of COVID, they're probably wishing they could have got a mulligan on this one. But, all things considered, right? So they've got Bobrovsky for another 6 years at that $10 million cap hit, and then they've got Dredger signed for one more year at $850, and then Montebaum is an RFA, which, I'm assuming they'll probably re-sign him at some point before the season starts. He'll get a 2-way deal and, get maybe 5-10 games in this season or something like that. But all in all, they're not doing anything right now because they're a low market team. They're going to be what I refer to as a poor team. And they're lucky that they have, Barkov and Huberdeau signed to such nice contracts. They're going to try to keep, especially with the flat cap, they're going to try to keep their real dollars spent as low as possible. And I don't think, obviously we're going to see them try to acquire maybe a backup or anything like that. I think they're going to stay put and, coast along with what they have and hope Bobrovsky gets it back together.
Yeah, I mean, there's no reason to blow this up yet. Right. He signed to such a big deal, you don't really have a choice. So you've got Bobrovsky. I think there's a chance that they, maybe take a flyer on somebody who they think, this guy maybe could come in and be serviceable. I wonder what team is going to go out and say, Michael Hutchinson was terrible for the Leafs, but you know what? He was put in a different situation, in a different system, and he was okay. Could he come in and be maybe a backup to a Bobrovsky? On top of that, I mean, they did just trade for Patrick Hornquist.
Right.
It's fitting that they happen to be the next team on our list, and they made that deal today. So,
move out Seaver and Matheson for Patrick Hornquist.
Yeah, and defensively, I think they were able to make that move based on the rest with Ekblad and Yandel and Strawman, and it's a good move up front, since they'll likely lose Mike Hoffman. He's a UFA, so essentially replaces Mike Hoffman, but. In some ways a downgrade, in some ways an upgrade, because you can just a very different player, right? But
yeah,
we'll talk more about the upfront, the defense on some other shows. But obviously the Panthers staying put with their goaltending and trying to make moves up front to build depth and to just kind of replace the guys that they're already going to lose. Do you think they're going to lose Dadonov? You think he's going?
Yeah, I think Dadonov and Hoffman are both going to go. I think, again, Florida's going to be one of those poor teams that want to spend as least amount of money as possible, and they'll try to find, I don't want to necessarily say, like, for instance, Bobby Ryan just got put on waivers today for the purpose of being bought out.
Yeah.
And he's that type of player where you could probably go snag him for a couple $1 million, and say, hey, let's give you a shot at maybe some second, third line minutes, reset, come hang out at the beach. And
not a bad spot, too, for a guy who... I don't want to, like, of course, he had his struggles and he's getting on top of that. But a place where there's a lot of pressure, Ottawa, even though they were bad, there still is a lot more pressure. A lot more people know who you are, and there just is that extra layer. A place like Florida, nobody knows who you are.
Right.
It'd be a good place for a guy like Bobby Ryan potentially. Okay, the LA Kings. They've had the same goaltender for quite some time. They did trade away Jack Campbell at the trade deadline to the Maple Leafs, and it kind of leaves them just with Jonathan Quick, of course, with Cal Peterson. But I don't know if Cal Peterson is really going to get any kind of legitimate shot with this team or not. But what are your thoughts on this team?
Yeah, this is another one where I think you're going to have another team probably stick with what they have. This could be a team, again, because they moved out Campbell to acquire some assets. Peterson, they're going to definitely give him a shot at camp to go in there and, prove that he can be that number two guy. I mean, he had decent numbers in 8 games. He had, a little over 920 save percentage. So, not bad for a small sample size. Yeah. But this could definitely be a team where maybe you go out and, try to acquire a veteran backup. Maybe they, again, Ottawa, try to reach for Craig Anderson, who they just announced they're not going to re-sign. Maybe you go get a veteran guy like that, or maybe even make a deal for, a younger guy like, Malcolm Subban, who probably Chicago would be happy to get rid of. And maybe you think, okay, we'll take a flyer on this guy, and, maybe he might pan out, maybe he might not, but, low risk, high reward.
Yeah, I mean, they've got the second overall pick.
That's that being moved at all, and they're not taking Askarov either. So
no, yeah. So I mean, this team they're building. They're not gonna do much. I guess my only question is, could Jonathan Quick be moved? Like if this, if they just look at this and say, if Jonathan Quick is kind of maybe has one good year, 2 good years left. Are we in the position to where that's going to matter for us, or is that just going to hurt us, win us some extra games, and turn us into a bubble team when we really just need another year kind of down in the dumps, let us develop our players and be in a better position in the future? Could he be somebody that is moved to just to bring in additional assets? Could maybe fetch a first round pick from a team that is a little more desperate for a goaltender, potentially when all the deck is empty and every move that's already going to be made has been made, and suddenly you're left with options like that where he's got 3 years left on his deal. It's not that much of a cap hit. It is, but it's nothing insignificant. But $5.8 million is certainly something that you could manage. LA could hold on to some of the cap hit, and you could maybe, if you could grab a first round pick for Jonathan Quick, I wonder if they would consider that.
Yeah, I mean, listen, they've got Jeff Carter and Dustin Brown signed for a couple more years, and I think they want to try to see if they can be competitive this year, right? But I do think you're right, though. If course of the season they're not performing well, this team's at the bottom again, and maybe you have other teams like, for instance, maybe a Colorado, right? We've talked about them being a team maybe looking for a goaltender. Maybe they don't go out and get anything. Maybe they just feel, hey, we're going to sit back and see what we got this year, see how we do. And then, hey, guess what? Colorado could really use a goaltender. Maybe somebody gets hurt, and they're like, this would be a nice little option for us for the next couple of years.
Yeah, you're right. It does sound more like maybe we do this later on in the season to see what we have.
Right. And the other thing is, too, is when you look at all these teams that are trying to budget for, again, you hear a lot of teams that are budgeting and trying to, be conservative with what they spend. He's got a $5-point-something million cap hit, but his real dollars amount is only 3.5. So teams that don't want to spend, they get that cap hit, but they don't have to spend.
Great point. We'll see. I mean, there's really nothing out there about the Kings looking to move Jonathan Quick, and I would suspect that with all the goaltenders available, that would be something that happens down the line after everything's over. Like, let's say everything happens and Edmonton is just left with their pants off. They've got nothing, and it's you're gonna have to go sign Brian Elliott or bring back Mike Smith, like one of those scenarios, and suddenly there's a, hey, what if we were to deal our first round pick? We have had taken a lot, used our first round picks through the years. We could maybe spare one and bring in a goalie, and I wonder if LA would be more than willing to give that up. Other than the fact that, I mean, they have almost $17 million in cap space. That would give them $22 million in cap space. Like, they might be underneath
the floor.
The floor, which you got to stay above that as well. Fortunately, they're paying Dion Phaneuf $4 million this next year.
Ooh.
Well, that's his cap hit.
Yeah, you forgot about that.
Without playing, and Mike Richards and Ilya Kovalchuk. So got a few contracts you're just randomly paying for. So really, if you take away those contracts, I mean, you're at basically $11 million that they're just paying people to not be on their team. So that means their payroll really is about $53 million.
Jeez.
It's quite small. Okay, that's the LA Kings. I mean, they're kind of one of those teams. We expect them to be pretty bad next year too, and but it'll be fun that they'll actually have someone reasonable up front.
Yeah,
Get themselves a new potential superstar. The Minnesota Wild.
Yeah,
we've talked a lot about Devin Dubnyk in our previous show potentially being moved, and now I want to find out, what are they actually going to do? Yeah,
I truly believe they're going to buy this guy out. Because I think, again, Stalock's got, relatively cheap money for the next 2 years at about $800,000. And they've got a pretty decent goaltender who's an RFA, Kokkonen, who I think that they probably, maybe not ready to anoint him as the future in net, but they're like, hey, we really like this guy. We think he has the potential to be that guy. So, I think, again, they're going to go out, they're going to re-sign him to a two-way deal probably, and give him an opportunity to come into camp and potentially be a backup and be a 1A, 1B thing with Stalock maybe. But I also think this team is going to look for, a veteran guy, another goaltender. If they can get their hands on, maybe say a Marc-Andre Fleury on the cheap, or, maybe even they reach as far as like a Craig Anderson, right? Or even a Freddie Anderson for that matter. Maybe they look and they say, hey, we're just going to go all in now because, again, Parise, Suter aren't getting any younger. And now you look at what they did on the back end, right? They signed Brodin to that big extension.
Yep.
And so now Matt Dumba kind of becomes expendable. And when you look at a team like Toronto, who would love to get their hands on a Matt Dumba, you say, okay, maybe we do like an extension sign and trade kind of thing. I don't know if that's even possible with
I think
CBA,
that Dumba would fetch more than Anderson.
Oh, absolutely.
I think that's a great thought. I mean, also trading away Eric Stahl bringing in Marcus Johansson, essentially.
They would love to find a center right now too. Yeah, because they moved out Eric Stahl.
Right.
They really don't have a number one center. So,
and truthfully, I mean, Eric Stahl, other than his, I know he had 40 goals a couple years ago. Not really a number one center anymore. Other than maybe he can be a number one center on a bubble team,
right?
Sort of, and essentially a part of a grouping of centers that can play. This team doesn't seem to be a team that's just going to go all in to me.
Okay.
I keep wanting this team to just go, we need to rebuild. We need to have somebody who is at a certain caliber of player to be able to really advance. Like, we've watched this team toil. They're good enough to make the playoffs pretty much every year. And that's it. Nobody expects them to win.
Right,
the furthest they've ever gotten is the conference finals, and that was in 2000 and... When was that? That was in 2000 and...
It was a while ago.
3.
Yeah, 2003. Yeah. But that was like their second year in the league. But their franchise leader. Yeah, right. You're right. Their franchise leader, though, in wins is Devin Dubnyk with 10 wins
in the playoffs.
Yeah, in the playoffs.
Yeah.
So clearly they're not having a lot of.
They've won 4 playoff series or something.
They're not going deep every year. So yeah, I agree with you. I think they do need to hit a hard reset. But especially maybe Bill Guerin coming in now, maybe he'll be willing to do that. But previous GMs, as long as Parise and Suter have been there tied to these deals, they're like, no, we can't hit the reset button.
And I wonder. I mean, they still have their top 4 is great. There's few teams with a better top 4 on defense. And if they can kind of figure out the front end, maybe they are a competitive team. But yeah, it just seems like they're missing that star power, and they're just gonna toil again and again and again and again because teams around them keep on getting better, and they kind of just. They make a lateral move here and a slight move up there, and then they lose this guy and take a little niche back. Like they're just consistently okay.
There you go.
And
that's
perfect word. Kind of been the story of the Minnesota Wild since they came in the league in 1999, which is I'll take it over like the Florida Panthers.
Oh sure,
they're one shot at the finals, and they really have done nothing since.
Got destroyed.
Yeah. Whew. Okay, let's go Montreal Canadiens. Pretty easy one, I think.
Yeah, except the one thing, obviously, we know Carey Price, he's not going anywhere. Jake Allen, they brought in. He's got 1 year left at 4.35. But to me, this is a guy, Jake Allen, I look at that they're going to hold on to start the season, but they're going to move at some point. Because one, obviously, we know he's not going to re-sign there. He wants to go somewhere where he can get a better opportunity. Not that he won't get an opportunity to play some games. He'll probably get 30 games playing behind Carey Price, but...
I think they'd love that. I mean, that's why you bring in a guy like that is to play... To take the load off of Carey Price.
Right. But I think at some point, you have to realize, hey, he's not re-signing here. Let's get something out of this guy so we don't have just wasted that trade for him. And so I think ultimately he gets moving. I think it's going to be a situation where maybe a goaltender goes down and is injured, or maybe a team just isn't getting the type of goaltending they want. And at $4 million, I mean, you can, halfway through the season, you can fit that in just about any cap, situation that you want, really.
Yeah. And at worst, I mean, you have yourself a nice backup goaltender for the whole season. You can use them, and Carey Price needs a break, or if he gets hurt, you know that you have a better than average backup goaltender in your arsenal, and away you go for however long of a stretch you need. And maybe you keep him all through the playoffs just as insurance, just in case something happens, because hey, he did step in the playoffs, and he played okay in the playoffs.
Yeah, pretty good.
It certainly wasn't his fault that St. Louis lost. And so yeah, I think Jake Allen, serviceable move, and I personally don't think he'll get dealt.
Okay.
Unless Montreal's bad. Like, if they're way out of it, then sure. Of course, most teams deal their UFAs, and Montreal could fire sale. I mean, they've got, at the end of next year, Thomas Tatar, Brendan Gallagher, Philip Deneau, Joel Armia, Jordan Wheel. They have a lot of UFAs at the end of this next year, so there certainly are some players that they could move out. I doubt they move Brendan Gallagher, but all the other names potentially could go.
Yeah.
Okay. Nashville Predators.
Yeah. This is a team, my goodness. They've got a guy in UC Saros who they want to be the future, but I don't think they're confident in him right now. Right? Pekka Rinne's got one more year left, at $5 million, and then Saros at 1.5. He'll obviously get an extension at some point.
Sure. Which my guess is that Nashville would love to get him signed to an extension now at a cheap rate
before he starts putting up money.
I want to wait to see if I can't boost my numbers.
Right. I would too, absolutely.
Because what are you signing him right now? Maybe a 2.5, like $3 million at the most.
You give him Matt Murray type contract, 3 years, $3.5, $4 million, whatever. But I mean, let's face it. I think Nashville to me is one team that I think could see some not drastic changes, but they could see a lot of movement because they do have a lot of like middling six guys that I think they wouldn't mind moving out or trying to make some changes to, because this team has kind of gone stale. And, with that kind of movement, I mean, let's face it, it could be at the bottom of the barrel and, or they could be up at the top. And so to me, I think this is a team, again, who would love to get their hands on, another goaltender. But unfortunately, I think with Saros there and Rinne signed for another year, I think they're just going to be patient, stick with what they have, and then, maybe deal with it next offseason if they want to.
Pretty easy one outside of the fact that if they don't have the year they want, then they do have the trade chip of Pekka Rinne.
Yep.
And I'm sure there'll be plenty of teams who'd be willing to throw at least a second round pick at a Pekka Rinne. My question really goes more to Nashville Predators at the top. Like, I think that they certainly put themselves in a position to be a successful winning team. And unfortunately, other than their one Stanley Cup final run, they have run into some other really good teams, and they just have kind of been on the brunt end of losing to them. And they sort of have fallen from that place where I'd say that they're a contender. And you have to start wondering, I mean, they bring in John Hines. He's their head coach now. Like, in my mind, he might be David Poyle's last hire as a coach. Like, David Poyle's 70 years old. He's been the GM since 1997.
Wow. Yeah, you forget about that.
It's amazing. I mean, he's been their GM for 23 years.
Wow. He's Ken Holland type numbers.
Yeah, I mean he's the longest tenured GM in the NHL. And I mean, they're not going to fire him.
No,
unless he starts having really bad seasons, which they're not. But you got to wonder, maybe is John Hines his last hire? How long will he remain in the general manager position? Now, I mean, he's also president of hockey operations. Like, it's a pretty easy, I'm stepping down from my GM day-to-day roles and passing, I'll stay as the hockey ops guy, blah, blah, blah. There's all sorts of things that generally guys do where they're not just going to quit at the end of whatever their contract is. I'm sure that he's signed to something somewhat significant at this point. But, I wonder, as far as the future of the Nashville Predators go, where maybe he stands, because that'll be a huge day. Whenever David Poyle steps down, this team will likely take a much different direction.
Yeah, there'll be some drastic changes
for their future. But until then, defense.
All right,
wins championships.
Well, they locked Yossi up, so there you go.
Yeah, they're a serviceable team, and that's kind of what they're going to be. The New Jersey Devils. Speaking of John Hines, former coach of the New Jersey Devils. They're in an interesting spot. Corey Schneider experiment is, I'd say, is probably about over. I don't know how you can just continue to go back to a guy who continuously lets you down and gets hurt. And I mean, it's not to say that he can't have some okay moments, but I mean, really, you look at his last 3 seasons, and he just has not been good. We even I think when we first started the show 3 years ago, we were talking about how Corey Schneider was probably on his way out, and that has proven to be true. He's played 79 games in the last 3 years.
It was, I think, when he got his first win this season. He only played 11 games, but his first win was like a first win in a full calendar year.
Yeah,
when he got it, it was crazy to think about it that way. But this goaltending situation is going to be interesting because I think obviously they like Mackenzie Blackwood, and I think they not necessarily are going to anoint him as like their future in goaltending, but I think they really like what they have, and they think this guy can be, if anything, a nice 1B type goaltender for this team. Now they've
only
got
23 years old. It's hard to like
give
write
up on
the
a guy
book one way or another. Yeah.
Right. I mean, they've got plenty of cap space too. They're $26 million roughly to spend, and so you can go out there and essentially get whatever you want. But obviously, we know they need to fill in some holes up front, and maybe on the back end as well. But to me, I think obviously they're going to have Schneider. I think at some point they probably bury him in the minors to maybe save that $1 million, or maybe they even think about a buyout. Because the buyout window is open now. I don't know if that's going to be possible for them, but that might end up happening. Blackwood's an RFA. They're going to re-sign him. But the one name I look at that I think would be a great fit here is Thomas Greiss. I think he doesn't have to go far, just right across the river to New Jersey from the island. And to me, he would be a great fit, a guy who could play 40 games, give you that great veteran leadership. Yeah. He's played under good coaches. So, hey. And he's been on some crappy Islander teams, too, so he knows what it's like to play for garbage. So
that's true. Yeah, I mean, you look at a team like the Devils, you don't necessarily expect them to do much next season. Like, I think it's going to definitely be a continuing rebuild type of year. I mean, of course, they now bring in Tom Fitzgerald. They've got Lindy Ruff at the helm, and Lindy Ruff he's not going to be somebody who's going to be okay with just rebuilding.
Right.
But they need to figure out, like, Jack Hughes, I think he had a less than expected year. He didn't really wow the way that a first overall pick generally does. And, that kind of goes for Nico Hischier too. I mean, yes, he signed to a $7 million deal now. And I mean, it's not like he's somebody putting up 70 points. Nico Hischier's best year, 52 points, was 3 years ago. I mean, last year, 14 goals, 36 points in 58 games.
Yeah,
it's time for him to do what he is getting paid for.
Yeah, I think
he's good defensively, of course.
Yeah, he's a little different animal because, again, like you talk about the two-way game, but I think both those guys, they could use some help on the wings, and if they get it, then they could be those productive players. But Jack Hughes, to me, he needs a little bit more size, a little bit more seasoning, and he'll eventually, find his game because, I mean, you don't take a guy number 1 overall like that, and I don't think he's going to be the Neil Yakupov of last year's draft. No.
But you do, you do hope that he can develop into something special like you expect at the number 1 overall pick.
Well, yeah, you'd love him to be the next Austin Matthews or, something like that. Or even, I mean, you would be happy if you can get like a...
You want him to be a cornerstone type of player at first overall. Like, it doesn't matter if he's a top 5 player in the league, but you want him to be a top 20 player in the league at first overall. Like,
that would be ideal.
That's kind of what you're expecting him to develop into. Now, top 20 player in the league, players move in and out of that type of slot very often. So I think you're hoping for more from your 2 first overall picks.
Yeah.
Now, is there a chance that they just go ham, you think, and just go out and try to buy one of these top goalies? Like, do they go after Braden Holtby and just put their stamp on this goaltending position and see if they can bring somebody in and then, hey, we've got that taken care of for the next 5 or 6 years?
Yeah, it's funny because I mean, honestly, there's 2 big unrestricted free agent names that I think of where you could spend a lot of money on, and that's Braden Holtby and Jacob Markstrom. Sure. I think Robin Lehner, if he's going to sign anywhere, it's still going to be Vegas, but ultimately, I think Holtby's probably at the point in his career where he wants to win. I think Markstrom might be the one guy who, you could lure away with a couple more dollars, right?
Yeah.
So, maybe.
And he's a little younger than some of the UFAs that are out there. He's only 30. And so is Holtby. He's not like Greiss where he's 34 or like a Craig Anderson who's 39. These are guys who are going to be looking for longer term deals too. So you have to decide, do we want to lock up a goalie and maybe be in a situation like we are in with Corey Schneider now, where we're at the end of this big deal and we look back at it and you regret pretty much the entire deal.
Yeah, and I think that's going to be the one caveat in the whole thing is they're going to look at that and be like, well, let's not spend. Let's get somebody who we can, pay $3.5-4 million and be a 1A, 1B situation with Blackwood.
Okay, New York Islanders, team that went much further than I think anybody else expected them to. They hung with the Tampa Bay Lightning pretty well. and they're just going to keep building. But they do have Thomas Greiss, who's a UFA. They of course have Sorokin and then Varlamov as their starting goaltender. Are they any shakeups here, or we kind of already see the shakeup last year with the signing of Varlamov?
Yeah, I think Greiss is gone. He's going to go, like I said, I think New Jersey's a good fit, but he'll go somewhere else. Obviously, Varlamov's got 3 more years, but Sorokin's the key here because I think they've got him on a 1-year deal at $2 million. I think they're going to wait till probably mid to late end of season-ish to see what they got out of him before they start talking extensions. And then they're going to go from there. And I think if, maybe he doesn't pan out, which I doubt it, he's going to be phenomenal in my opinion. Maybe not go steal the show type phenomenal, but I think he'll be a quality goaltender. I think they'll sign him to an extension. That'll be their pair for the next few years.
They are paying Rick DiPietro $4.5 million one more time.
One more time.
He his 15-year deal ends this season. They did buy him out in 2013, but I should say yes, his contract would have ended, but because they bought him out, they'll pay him $1.5 million until 2029. So they're going to keep on paying him $1.5 million, but it was one of those exempt buyouts, so it doesn't count towards their cap. They do have $9 million left. They got to sign Ryan Polak, and there's some holes that they'll need to fill, but. And Matthew Barzal is going to need a new contract, and that'll be mainly their focus. The New York Rangers, they'll be in a really this one is probably one of the more fun teams because they do have 3 goalies who all would like to be involved.
Yeah, and why wouldn't you? I mean, you've got Alex Lafreniere coming in. You've got Capo Caco, so you've got some young pieces. Not to mention, I mean, you've got Panarin and Zibanejad and Kreider. You've got these great veterans. So you've got a team that has an opportunity to really accelerate that rebuilding program. Really, yeah. I mean, yeah. But to me, right, obviously we know Shesterkin is going to be the guy they're going to look to be the number 1 moving forward. I think he showed that he still has, that he's got the numbers, the capability to do so. .932 save percentage this year. The big question mark for me, though, Henrik Lundqvist, right? I think he's the guy that really kind of swings their goaltending, either way. And what I mean by that is, do they go the buyout route? Because that is an option that I keep hearing, that they're going to want to buy him out just because, one, they want that money off their books. Not necessarily because they're in a market where they have to save money, but because they would like to use that cap money elsewhere and kind of save it and spend it, on other things. And then 2, if they don't buy out Lundqvist, then obviously Gorgiev's got to get traded. And I think you could get a pretty good return for a guy like that because he's in what I don't want to say like underrated name, but he's a guy you don't hear a name floated around a lot because of this big carousel of goaltenders, right? Circling around, and he could be a guy where you could really get good value out of because he is capable of being a nice little 1B goaltender, and who knows, maybe he could turn into a nice, Talbot situation where he could be a starter somewhere. Well,
and my mind is that they're going to go in next season with Shesterkin and Georgiev.
Yeah,
there's your 1A 1B. See who battles it out. Yes, I know that in what the Frank Saravelli, he reported that the Rangers are likely to buy him out. So yeah, that's
answers that.
But he also I have seen that Lundqvist said, I'm not even sure I'm going to come back.
Oh wow, okay.
I thought that I had seen that somewhere. So
I mean, a guy who's been so institutionalized in that franchise, right? If they buy you out, it's like, hey, do I want to even go move somewhere? Do I want to go, give it a go somewhere else? And maybe you could see him going and signing on the cheap to a team like Colorado, where he has an opportunity to win, and maybe they wouldn't mind bringing in a veteran guy, but
for league minimum,
right?
Yeah, that's certainly possible. I mean, it sounds like he's going to get bought out, and it's funny because just probably 2 years ago, if you had said they're going to buy out Henrik Lundqvist, people would say you're nuts.
Right.
The Rangers will never do that. Like, he truly is the king.
Yeah.
And I mean, my guess is that he's offered a position within the organization. If he wants to retire, they'll happily let him be a part of the organization.
Without a doubt. And I personally
the
want
face
him,
of the franchise.
I want him to get bought out so he can go somewhere and compete, right? Because I do think the Rangers are maybe 1 or 2 years away from being a real Cup contender. You know, they need a couple more pieces. And
would somebody be willing to bring him in for $4.2 million if they split the 50-50 on?
Probably
Actually,
not.
I don't know if they can. They have. They've just bought people out. They don't have any retained salary. Yeah.
Okay.
But if they do buy him out, I mean, this next year they're paying $6 million to Shattenkirk, $300,000 for Spooner, and $1.1 million to Girardi, and then that would be another certain amount of price for Lundqvist. So they're paying a lot for nobody on the books, for no players, for a team that looks like they can start competing. So it'll be interesting to see if maybe they could find a suitor for Lundqvist if it all works out. But likely bought out. Should we do one more?
Yeah.
The Ottawa Senators.
Let's wrap it up.
All right, Ottawa Senators about to probably. I mean, I can't see Craig Anderson hanging around anymore.
No, they already said that they're not going to re-sign him.
Okay.
So
okay.
Problem solved right there.
There we go.
He'll go somewhere else, be a backup maybe. Because I think he's still very serviceable. And you look at the team that was in front of him, and he still managed to put up a .904 save percentage. And I think he's still got some quality goaltending
on a terrible team too. Yeah.
So he could go somewhere and be a nice little backup. Maybe a San Jose or something. Who knows? But as far as the rest of this goaltending goes, Nielsen, they've got one more year at 2.6. He'll be the backup there. Hogberg, whatever. I don't even. He's an afterthought in my opinion. What I do like for this team, though, they're again another one of these poor teams that are going to look to spend as little money as possible in real dollars.
Sure.
And they're especially with the buyout of Bobby Ryan coming now, Anderson not re-signing, they're going to be I think somewhere $33 million below the cap floor.
They have $43 million in cap space right now.
Right. But they're going to be way below the cap floor, and so they're going to look to get up there. And one name I look at who I think, again, could be a great trade asset for them to bring in because, one, they want to get to that cap floor but spend as little money as possible, is James Reimer.
There you go.
I think he could get moved here, and they
Poor
could probably
James.
fetch a third, a couple thirds, maybe a second-round pick or something to bring him in here because Carolina, again, we know would like to upgrade at the goaltending position.
I mean, I think that Carolina would happily trade him for a 5th round pick.
Okay, yeah.
That would be my guess. Like, if somebody's willing to take that contract away from them, why not?
Sure, yeah. Especially because, again, like I said, they would love to go out and maybe make a move for a big-name goaltender. Whether or not they do is a whole other story. But Reimer, all his bonuses, he's only going to get paid in real dollars around $800,000. And at $3.5 million at cap hit, that's real nice for a poor team.
They are going to be horrifyingly bad.
I think, you know what? Here's another scenario I keep hearing,
outside
too.
of Thomas Shabbat.
Let me ask you this.
And Kachuk.
So I heard a scenario the other day. I can't remember what it was. If you're the New York Rangers, okay, would you consider trading the number 1 pick for Brady Kachuk and the number 5 pick?
Wow.
Someone threw that out the other day, and it was on TSN somewhere, and I heard that, and I was just like, you know what? If you're the Rangers, I might actually consider that because you get an asset in Brady Kachuk who would fit in nicely, I think, in any organization and is going to produce. I think he's a 50, 60-point guy. And you put him on a line with like Panarin, he could potentially be a 70-point guy. And then you still at number 5, you get a really, really good draft pick.
Yeah,
so,
but at the same time, you don't want to pass up on an Eichel or a Matthews or
right. And that's the flip side of that coin. But now,
and I don't think that Brady Kachuk is in that type of conversation. Like he's a very good player. Potentially like a top. He is a top line player, but is he that type of?
He's not a game changer.
Yeah.
He's not a line driver.
Yeah, so that would. I don't think that I would do it.
Okay.
I don't know if I'm ever trading my 1st overall pick because even if it comes out, like let's say that legitimately happened, Ottawa did offer that, and you said no, we're going to take this guy. Lafreniere is a bust. Do people look back at you and go, "You idiot! You should have taken the Kachuk and the 5th pick," or do you go, "I mean, it was the 1st overall pick, and everyone had this guy at 1st overall. Like, what are you going to do?" Right. You have to you're going to take him unless you find something crazy out about him, like he is some weird injury and it's been disclosed, something
like a Nolan Patrick situation where you find the injury last minute.
Right.
Yeah, the concerns raise.
Yeah.
I get it.
other than that, I mean, I'm taking the best player in a draft year, and a guy who isn't just like, oh, he's a good first overall pick. Like, he's going to be an amazing first overall pick.
No, I agree. But Ottawa is a team, though, at the goaltending position, I would love to see a little shakeup, even though people have him maybe slotted a little closer to like number 10, 13 kind of spot. Askarov from Russia, because what I've seen of him in the KHL so far, he looks like the real deal. And if Ottawa snags him at number 5, that'd be a nice little wild card pick that maybe they could throw in and just say, 5. Be Marc-Andre Fleury. You're getting shoved into the fire real fast. Wow. Go show us what you got.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, right now, Ottawa, not including their goaltenders, has 7 players signed to next year. They have one forward line, and that would be Artem Anisimov, Colin White, and Brady Tkachuk. They're your only forwards signed right now. Granted, most of their guys they're RFAs, so they'll be able to sign them and bring them back. But this is a team that I think is going to be very just in the dumps the whole year. They'll have little spurts where, these younger guys kind of hit their stride, and they'll at least work hard. They're going to be one of those temes.
One of those teams.
Where it's like, it's a bitch to play Ottawa because they could randomly beat you.
Right.
But I'd see once again maybe Ottawa and Detroit kind of duking it out for that bottom place spot in the league. And their goaltending is only going to probably get a little worse. Without Anderson there, there's something about Craig Anderson too. I mean, he's like one of those.
He's a likable guy.
He's a locker room guy, and to lose him in a locker room of when things aren't exactly the greatest there, that'll also likely be a hit to morale of that team. But all right, we're chugging through. I mean, we've got 9-10 teams left to go. We'll do that on our next show. But until then, find us on Twitter at OT Hockey Talk, and you'll let us know what you thought of our analysis of the goaltending position of all these teams. If you think that we're dead wrong, you think somebody's signing somewhere, or if have some crazy ass insider information, like you're friends with the cousin of a nephew of one of these guys, and you know where they're going to sign, let us know. We'll break the news happily. Justin, any final thoughts?
No, just another tip of the cap. Congrats to you, sir.
I made the baby. See ya.